With the release of Fire Emblem Engage tomorrow, an accompanying developer interview covering who was in charge, a change in direction, characters, the emblem mechanic, and the art direction were spoken of. There is a lot of interesting and clarifying information within it, and this video serves to highlight what I believe are the most important and intriguing parts. The interview itself is linked down below. But first, if you've been supporting my content for a while and you want to support even more, please check out my Patreon link below. Hang out, get behind the scenes videos, exclusive Q&As, and Discord chats, and get to know the private community. I will also be live streaming Engage tomorrow on my streaming channel, so if you want to see my live reactions to Engage, check out Farcast streams linked below. Now let's get started with the video. Engage this time around ended up having two directors which represented the companies involved with the game, Intelligent Systems and Nintendo. Tsutomu Tei was Intelligent Systems' director, and was in charge of setting up the game's theme and direction, which is vital as this was his first time on the role. Meanwhile, Nintendo's Kenta Nakanishi took the responsibility of communicating with Intelligent Systems and managing both companies' progress. Masahiro Higuchi and Genki Yokota, meanwhile, also returned from previous entries as producers. A change in direction. In stark contrast with Three Houses, which was set in the Officers' Academy and featured branching stories involving the titular houses that can be described as a epic historical drama, Engage took a completely different direction. Seeking to capture a new and broader audience unfamiliar with the SRPG genre, a major goal was set from the start to simplify the plot's structure, aiming to invoke the feel of a traditional heroic fantasy. This way, more focus would be given to tactical gameplay, all while carrying RPG-like elements of moving through a world map to progress the story and raise your characters' strength. Not to mention, the new direction also impacted the game's box art, as unlike past entries which came after Awakening featuring the main character sharing spotlight with other key players, for Engage the two Alears were put directly at its very center to communicate the kind of journey that awaits players. It's similar to Three Houses' Byleths, but it's like if the Byleths were at the very front and the house leaders were instead behind them. Nakanishi. But we wanted our players to think of this title as a traditional heroic fantasy game. Alear, the protagonist that players control, grows as an individual guided by the emblems and leads the way, working with allies to achieve a great goal. So we were very keen to portray Alear in the center of the main visual. Yokota. Having multiple story paths makes the game interesting, but some may find the idea of playing all of them a bit overwhelming. But we have a world map in this title, so we hope our players will feel a sense of adventure as they travel across the Continent of Elyos. This time we wanted to create a game that appeals to a broader audience so that even players who are not yet aware of the fun of turn-based tactical RPG games would find it interesting just by looking at its visuals. Alear's personality. Due to the director's belief that traditional brave heroes no longer resonate with people as they used to, Alear was made to start more vulnerable and even not so heroic compared to previous lords. In early development though, this angle ended up overdone so much that Nintendo had to step in and point out that this would only cause fans to give up on Alear. The end result in their opinion is a protagonist who gradually grows during the story and eventually reaches the image of an expected classic hero. Yes, when a protagonist is a royal, they are often associated with bravery, or thought to have a sense of mission to fight against fate and challenges, and I believe those are the traits that people generally associate with heroes. However, I thought such heroes are unlikely to resonate with people today. Let's say someone tells you one day out of nowhere that your mission is to save the world. My guess is that your response wouldn't be like, okay, I'll do my best. So at the early stage of development, we had many moments where Alear fears the enemies and says unheroic things. We were worried that players would give up on the protagonist before they could get emotionally attached to them. But we knew we wanted to create a story that matches the modern world and made some adjustments. Characters. As for getting into developing the rest of Engage's cast, the main idea considered for it was depicting royals and nobility who could be relatable and down to earth with a modern audience, all while each of them featured their own unique qualities. But it's been more than 30 years since the first game in the series, so there are some elements that have changed over generations. For example, the characters in this game are royals and nobles, but they're also somewhat down to earth and relatable. It's the kind of closeness you might feel towards celebrities you can casually interact with on social media. Of course, every character has their own unique qualities to make them stand out on their own. The Emblem Mechanic. The whole idea of having characters from previous entries support the protagonist and their gang initially came, which may not end up being surprising, from the marriage system from Fire Emblem Genealogy of the Holy War, Awakening, and Fates. While discussing the mechanic which would define this game, developers noticed that with the marriage system, it's common that not only would players get to see the final outcome of their pairing late into the game, they would also want to try different combinations upon reaching it, but would face the issue that this means restarting the game from scratch. In a sense, Engage's emblems are meant to be a more casual take on the idea. They all provide characters various benefits when pairing with specific lords, all while being easily exchangeable for the sake of allowing more experimentation. And to make sure people wouldn't see them as just items, emblems were given their own type of supports, bond conversations with their wielders after being paired for enough time, which also plays a role with allowing their users to learn skills, increase weapon proficiencies, and even unlock classes they would normally lack access to. Incidentally, emblems are used very early on into the game because, according to the director, he wanted to show people that strategy RPGs could not be as complicated as it's often believed. People often say that turn-based tactical RPGs seem difficult or too complicated. In fact, I'm not very good at them myself. So from the beginning, we wanted to make this game something that looks intriguing and motivates players to try, rather than making them think they can easily take up this challenge. For that reason, Alear and Emblem Marth can engage and merge from the very first stage. The engage feature makes the game easier to play, even if tactics aren't their forte. Players can progress in the game by relying on the power and momentum that the engage feature brings from the beginning, and for those seasoned franchise players, the element of pairing up adds to the tactics and creates fun challenges as well as replayability. In any case, the developers were also fully aware of how the Emblem Mechanic could potentially break the game if not balanced correctly, so to avoid this, they brought Yuya Ishii as planning director halfway through development for the sake of somehow making everything work. It wasn't just balancing the weapon triangle that was difficult though. For Fire Emblem Engage, we were aiming for a clear-cut, flashy direction, but if we made the characters too strong from the beginning, we were concerned players might not find the game very challenging. Also, because of the nature of the game, where the player tactically moves the characters on a square-based grid, it was difficult to introduce an ability that was too dynamic even for the emblems. Because of the nature of the game, can you elaborate on that? Even though we came up with many different abilities, the stage designer said, if the character can move up to 5 additional grid spaces by engaging with Sigurd, the tactic would break, and there wouldn't even be a battle. On our end, we were thinking the characters actually need to move further than that, because without it, we won't be able to communicate the increased character movement, nor will it look appealing. Come to think of it, our requests were so outlandish. So we had the planning director, Ishii-san, join the team in the middle of development to ask him to somehow make everything work, including dramatic travel distance as well as teleporting. Asked him to somehow make everything work. That's quite a request. It must have been tough for Ishii-san. Art direction. When it came to look for Engage's character artist, Intelligent Systems wanted to find someone whose artistic design could appeal to a wide audience, potentially even younger people, as well as depict a wide variety of characters. And while they had many candidates, no one struck a chord with the developers like Mika Picasso did, as her vivid style, with bold yet bumpy colors, was exactly what they wanted. Picasso was more than happy with the game. After all, she's also a big Fire Emblem fan. She had a few concerns due to her inexperience drawing older characters and creatures which, nevertheless, was determined to overcome with Engage. Picasso drew male Alear and Celine as her first characters and later used them as templates for the upcoming ones. We had several candidates. We were looking for an artist whose design style would appeal to a broad audience, including younger players, as well as the ability to portray a variety of characters. Among the candidates, Mika Picasso-san's drawings were colorful, vivid, and really popped. They were a perfect fit for the flashy direction we wanted for this title. It was a unanimous vote with the entire development team agreeing she's the one. She gave us many ideas like, let's make Alear's hair color red and blue, or things like for Clan and Fran, green and red might be good, considering the previous titles in the series. That said, one concern she had, since she usually draws young characters, she was concerned about her confidence level in some of the character design. It's true that the designer's skills should not be limited to drawing cool nobles and young girls. In Fire Emblem, there are a variety of characters like hardened soldiers, and on top of that, they need to be able to draw armor, weapons, and creatures like Pegasuses. But Mika Picasso-san was up for the challenge, and she worked very hard. And when it came to translating her designs into 3D models, she was deeply involved with the process, providing not only pointers for the modelers to follow, but also giving them her approval once these finally captured her vision. Combat animations. Moving into the combat animations and the philosophy behind them, a lot of care was put into them this time around, thanks to the fact that Engage didn't have to consider the presence of battalions during battle like in Three Houses. A lot of freedom was gained by result, allowing them the chance to create flashier animations akin to what can be found in the FE games for the Game Boy Advance. The previous title, Fire Emblem Three Houses, was a war chronicle, so there was the flashy appeal of leading a large number of troops as battalions, but because of that, we weren't able to pursue the flashy dramatic effects in 3D. If the movement is limited to one character, it made it look like others in a battalion were not following, so we didn't have much choice but to tone down the actions. But this time, we could plan out the battle scenes on an individual basis, so we asked intelligence systems to make the actions as flashy as possible, like adding a dash motion effect when soldiers attack, or allowing one to shoot an arrow from a fort, and so on. Closing thoughts. The interview ends with the game's director mentioning that with Engage, he wanted to make a game that could appeal to those who would normally struggle getting into strategy RPGs. At the same time, Yokota, one of the producers, comments that the whole idea of choice has become very important with Fire Emblem when it comes to the various ways players can experience the game, which he hoped to convey with Engage. As for what awaits Engage's future, it was mentioned that besides the paid DLC content from the expansion pass, a free update later down the line will add more facilities to Somniel, and asks fans to look forward to that. We have a lot of characters, so I hope many players will relate to the story and cry and laugh along with the characters. If you find a favorite character in this game, we hope you'll continue to be a fan of them for many years to come. We believe that the charm of Fire Emblem games is that players become attached to the characters through gameplay and that the characters grow beyond the game. That will do it for this video. In my opinion, there are a lot of interesting and somewhat both validating and concerning information within. For me, this mostly has to do with some of the quotes from Tsukumu with regards to Alear's personality and his thoughts on main character motivations, Higuchi's quote on relatability, and Picasso's self-expressed concerns of our limitations on illustrating older characters. I do believe that this article will be more relevant to my review of the game's story and characters down the Engage content pipeline, but I suppose time will tell soon. But the emphasis on gameplay, graphics, and replayability has me pretty excited to see the full breadth of the game tomorrow. While there's a clear focus on a lighter, more traditional hero fantasy story, I'm still hoping for solid execution, as there seems to be less focus on historical and political drama in this one. I cannot wait to see you all in stream tomorrow. Comment down below your thoughts on this video, whether there are things that you found really interesting or concerning down below, and please leave a like, as leaving a like helps boost this video in the algorithm and it helps more new faces see it. Thanks for watching, deuces.